Welcome to another edition of the Hoot and Holler storytelling series recorded live at the Grandin Theatre in Roanoke, Virginia. At Blue Ridge PBS, we are proud to be able to record, edit, and present these stories well beyond the confines of the sold-out main theater at the Grandin. There is no one else who can bring these stories to your screen besides Blue Ridge PBS. So if you like what you see, I hope you'll consider becoming a sustaining member of the station. For details, visit blueridgepbs.org and click on the Donate tab. And thanks.
Blue Ridge PBS and Echo present Hoot and Holler, a live storytelling event recorded at the Historic Grandin Theatre in Roanoke, Virginia.
All right, take a good look at that logo. You'll see it on picket fence signs soon enough. From Roanoke to wherever we decide to stop. Thank you. All right, good evening, everyone. It's great to see you, and thank you so much for having me out here. What if I told you that just 4 short years ago, I'd be absolutely petrified and unable to stand up here before you? Yeah, I know, look at me now, right? Dressed up, lights on, microphone in hand, what a plot twist, right? Plus, they can't get me to shut up anymore. Anyway, for those of you who don't know me, which I'll go ahead and assume is just about everyone, my name is Mason Bibby. I'm a rising junior at North Cross School, a 16-year-old Roanoke native, a 4-time class president, and an award-winning writer. Yes, I did just list my whole resume, and I'll circle back to it ad nauseum. Hold in your sighs of disapproval because it's important to the story, I promise. And speaking of writing, that's exactly where we're going to begin. From a young age, I love to flex my creative muscles in all manner of stories, be it time-traveling children or cowboys with questionable morals. I could give you chapter and verse on these stories, but frankly, that'd be like showing you my baby pictures. Fun for me and painfully awkward for everyone else. So instead, let's skip ahead. Tonight's journey has twists, turns, and no clean ending. Why? Because to tell you the truth, I'm still writing it. Now these days, when people look at me, they see an accomplished writer, a seasoned orator, and a young leader with a full calendar and a strong affinity for coffee. They see a student positively obsessed with history and politics, and someone who can recite battle speeches like song lyrics and quote Roosevelt the same way most people quote Drake. I'll be here all night, ladies and gentlemen. Nobody here wants to hear the speech Teddy gave at the laying of the cornerstone of the House of Representatives office building, right? Oh, really? Perfect. In Bunyan Pilgrim's Progress, you may recall the description of the man with the muck rake. Kidding. Roosevelt's a great, but he's not me. As a journalist in our school's paper and a hobbyist writer, I became known for telling stories. Not just any stories, but stories about the greats. The men who scaled the cliffs of Normandy, braved the trenches at Shadow Theory, and marched across the bridge at Selma with nothing but conviction in their eyes and fire in their hearts. But there's one story I never told, my own. And tonight, we're going to break that mold. I guess we'll start, as did this whole mucky mess we're in back in 2020 on the eve of the pandemic. Before we were sticking pencil lead in Chromebooks or participating in whatever challenge of the week our favorite influencer had foisted onto us, we were little kids. Personally, I was a 10-year-old who, if you couldn't guess, had a severe affinity for 3 things: history, books, and of course, historical books. Now, before you fall asleep, I'd like you to humor me for a minute. It wasn't necessarily the subject matter, which to the layman may very well be unremarkable, but to the lessons in extraordinary courage. Battlefield, in the case of people like Washington or Grant, and moral, just like figures such as Abraham Lincoln, Susan B. Anthony, and so many more. To me, it was amazing how these small-town folks could stand up, speak out, and make a difference. I wanted to be part of that. The only problem? There were a lot of things inhibiting that. For one, the thought of even speaking up terrified me, let alone having someone disagree with me. Above that, I was just a kid from Southwest Virginia. What impact could I have? None, I thought, and actually resigned myself to that fate. Or at least, that's how it would have gone had it not been for the COVID-19 pandemic. And, in a twisted sort of sense, it would turn out to be one of the best things that ever happened to me. And before you pull out your torches and pitchforks, let me explain. I remember it like it was yesterday. The teacher gathered everyone up and announced to us that we'd be going home for 2 weeks. No explanation, no homework, no questions asked. My class of 5th graders practically jumped for joy. Yes, another 2 weeks to play Fortnite. That was the craze at the time. In contrast, I thought, yes, another 2 weeks to read. What kind of 10-year-old thinks like that? I was a weird kid. Now, to be honest, I said it as if it wasn't the case today. In any event, it was time to go home. An inquisitive mind like mine wasn't going to take the teacher's answer as fact. So I went home and asked around. My parents, who have always been candid and honest, let me know that a virus known as COVID had made landfall in the US. Even as an elementary schooler, I knew that wasn't good. But I don't think anyone, myself included, knew the sheer scope of this pandemic as it would come to be known. In fact, it would shape us all in ways we never could have imagined. With that said, it was holed up at time home for me and presumably all of you, and the times were good. For a little while, anyway. I really enjoyed spending more time with my family and away from the stressful hustle and bustle of school life. 2020 was, without a doubt, the year the world stood still. For some, it was travesty. For me, it began a destiny. After those 2 weeks elapsed, it became clear we weren't going to get to go back to school anytime soon. We began to get assigned work via Google Classroom and had to join classroom meetings via the dreaded Zoom calls. I got tired of it so quickly, and I begged my parents to send me back to school by the time the 1-year anniversary of the pandemic rolled around, and despite their reservations, they relented. I couldn't believe it. I was going back. I picked out a backpack adorned with my favorite cartoon characters and waited in earnest for the time when I could return. And wouldn't you know it, I kind of wish I'd stay home. Immediately after entering the building, I was hit with a stench that seemed like a patchwork of body odor and broken dreams. If ever there was a rock bottom, I thought surely I was going to hit it. Suffice to say, after a few weeks, I did. I found it quite difficult to fit within the established social caste that had been doled out earlier that year. Everyone was older, taller, they were on phones, and there was me, sitting there like a doofus with my SpongeBob lunchbox. Nevertheless, I managed to wiggle myself back into a group with some of my pre-pandemic friends, but there was still this looming feeling of inadequacy. I thought I'd never get over it. The fallout of the pandemic wasn't just evident in my social situation, it had a profound impact on my academics as well. My grades, which I had not worked to maintain, saw a significant slump. I began to rethink coming to school. Had I made a mistake? I began to think so. That was until one day in advisory. Student Council Association, my advisor said, these are the leaders of the middle school. They take time out of their days to make fun activities for everyone, and that's a big responsibility. At first, I didn't really consider the thought. Me, a leader? No way. I was too reserved, too insignificant, too timid. But as the week went on, and the deadline to enter the race approached, I found myself increasingly considering it. I spoke to a friend from grade school about it, who told me candidly, you'll always wonder what would happen if you didn't run. At least if you run and lose, you'll have closure from the outcome. She was right. It was time to put my name down and get this thing done. I sent the email, confirmed my candidacy, and got started on a speech and a poster. Bibby for 7th grade Officer of Communications, it proclaimed in my slapdash handwriting. That was the easy part. Next, I had to draft a speech that would unwittingly change my life. The morning of the vote was an uncharacteristically cold one for late spring. I donned a blue blazer, a white Oxford shirt, and a tie emblazoned with the school's colors. I was ready, and no matter the outcome, I could go home and say, I did this. It still wasn't safe for the whole school to gather, so I gave my speech from a Zoom meeting broadcast to every advisory group. My opponent, whose exploits frankly deserve their own story, seemed sure of himself. I wish I could say I had the same confidence, and I also wish I could recount what I said during that speech. Nevertheless, I approached my computer, gave the speech with all the courage I could muster, and that was that. Results were announced that afternoon, and wouldn't you know it, I didn't win. "We have a tie," the loudspeaker proclaimed. "You've got to be kidding me," I whispered under my breath. But despite the unexpected verdict, I couldn't help but feel an unbridled pride. If I could do that, I could do anything. I left school that day feeling more accomplished than ever before. I was and am Mason Bibby, and no one could take that away from me. The story didn't end there, and it continues to be written. 4 years later, I served as a 4-term student council president, winning my most recent election earlier in May. I've met with government officials from near and far like Mayor Joe Cobb and former Mayor Sherman Lee, Governor Glenn Youngkin, Representatives Morgan Griffith and Ben Klein, and did things I only could have dreamed of. Went to the state level for oratory and finished runner-up. Won essay competitions. Went to Model UN, where we heard former President Joe Biden speak. I'm heading to New York this summer to hone my writing skills. My journey from the classroom to the stage, from self-doubt to confidence, has been far from linear, but it's mine, and I'm shaping it with every step. In my younger years, I thought myself entirely unremarkable. No one made me special. I made that covenant to myself. Today, as brighter days are on the horizon, I'm now considering careers in military law and later, and write this down, politics. Though seemingly lofty and unreachable, I know my unbridled patriotism, penchant for perseverance, and undying love for spreading hope, integral parts of my personality, will serve me well. One constant that's remained throughout my years is that I'm an unwaveringly firebrand patriot, the kind who put the crack in the Liberty Bell to remind people that freedom still rings. I'm the only me out there, and I'll continue to live every day, week, month, and year dedicated to that fact. I'm a leader, a writer, an orator, a student, a dreamer, a doer, and so much more. Because I know without a doubt, I was born for such a time as this. So what's the point of all this? Why ramble on about Roosevelt, Fortnite, and moral courage? Because if you take nothing else away from tonight, take this. Your voice matters, even when it shakes, even when it's small, even when the world tries to tell you otherwise. 4 years ago, I couldn't have imagined being up here, but I kept writing, I kept speaking, I kept believing, and now, they still can't get me to shut up. So there's a point I want to drive home here. I want you to believe. Believe in yourself. Believe in your children. Have hope. Because as icky, divisive, and desolate things may look, hope is the only thing we can rely on. It's the only thing I relied on. And it's the only thing that guides me still. Thank you so much.